So cool. We're right at the start time to get us going in the right direction. I'll just introduce our panelists, and then we'll get started here in the next minute or two with the meat of our content. So first, we've got Mark. Mark was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. Mark, are you still in Arizona? I know you're in Arizona. Are you still in Phoenix?
Yeah, I'm still in North Phoenix.
Awesome. So he got a bachelor's degree in global leadership from ASU. Still a big ASU guy, or
Oh yeah.
Yeah, nice. In quality systems management, he just joined Xometry as the senior director of quality operations and regulatory affairs. We're super lucky to have him. He's already made a huge impact, and I can attest to this. We have a cooking channel in our Slack, in our work Slack. Mark is a very great cook, and I'm jealous of that outdoor kitchen. We've also got Sam Kulaar joining us. So he was born and raised in Punjab. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, India. He got a bachelor's degree in computer science from San Jose State. So we got a bunch of West Coast guys here so far. VP of operations at Jarvis Manufacturing. Jarvis is one of our best partners in the Xometry partner network. And they also use a Zeiss CMM. So Sam's going to bring a really, really unique perspective here as far as someone that uses the product, but also uses it for Xometry work and non-Xometry work. Loves spending time with his family and doing outdoor photography. Sam, you're going to have to share some of those photographs with us afterwards, because we'd love to check those out. And then last but certainly not least, we've got David Wick, who's the manager of product management at Zeiss Industrial Quality Solutions. Got a degree from the University of Minnesota. Had a fantastic football season last year.
Yes, they did.
And an MBA from the University of St. Thomas. We're super lucky to have David joining us. He's going to be, he's directing the new energy vehicle of business development initiative at Zeiss, and also just brings a really phenomenal perspective of the Zeiss products and one of the industry leaders in CMMs, which is obviously what we're here to talk about today. So we're 3 minutes in. We've got a lot of our attendees kind of already in. So let's get into the meat of it. You guys ready?
Yeah,
let's go.
Awesome. Cool. So we'll start it off. What are some of the quality tools available in the industry today? Obviously CMM is one of the things we talk about, but what are some of the other tools that you use that potentially CMMs could replace if you're looking to make that type of purchase? Sam, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. I think what we've seen other than the traditional CMMs lately is there's optical CMMs, which use backlit cameras along with they tend to be much faster if you're doing high production work where you have to give reports on every single part on like 100% of the dimension. They work much faster. And then you also have the new kind of like a 5-axis CMM where you have the rotating head where you can just basically check the entire part in one go. Those things streamline the process. And also there's other measurement equipments like micrometers that you can hook up directly to your computer and while you're measuring, just directly input data into Excel sheets or inspection sheets provided by your customer. That helps you streamline the inspection process.
Absolutely. And Mark, what have you seen kind of some of our other partners use, and in your past life, what have you seen some of the major companies you've worked with use?
I think a lot of companies that don't rely on a resource like a coordinate measuring machine, they're still using optical comparators. They're using surface plate height stands, indicators. Of course, micrometers are always key as well, and using a variety of quality inspection devices and tooling that sometimes take up a lot of space. They require calibration on an annual cycle. Utilizing a coordinate measuring machine or a CMM, you can't really only use that. For thread gauges, nothing will replace a thread gauge. However, the coordinate measuring machine does actually broaden your capabilities from a manufacturing and inspection capability, because the technology is so much more advanced than what it was even 5 or 10 years ago.
Absolutely, absolutely. And David, is there anything consistent that when you're working with people on these projects that you're talking about, either supplementing with a CMM or CMM, replacing some of these tools that they've mentioned?
Excuse me. Yeah, one of the things that we see is that contemporary CMMs can combine the functions of traditional roughness testers or form measurement systems, because there are surface roughness sensors that can be used with CMMs now. The other thing I'd mention is a CMM, because it's got such an integrated software package, can often replace a standalone software package that a customer's been using to gather data, make histograms, and record data that they then have to pass forward to their customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, as when you guys purchased your CMM, what were some of the tools that maybe you stopped using all the time? Once you got yours in.
Well, one of them was a drop indicator, because we had this one part that we were making for a medical customer, and there was a tolerance on a length plus minus 5/10, and we had to check on every single part, and we're making thousands in a year. So the customer required us to bring that CMM for them so that they can get a computerized result, which get rid of a human error, because if your zeros are not set on the drop indicators, you might have a different reading. So the CMMs, they get rid of that. So because you're actually checking from a CAD model and it's all computerized, and you're going to scan the surfaces. And that part for those customers is probably the least item that we check on those that CMM. I'm using that for a lot of others, and it's just been getting rid of all other like micrometers and calipers. And we have the job set up that you can, once it comes back, just load it on the machine. I don't have to be there. I can send an operator, or I can just load up the whole table and run it, go home, and then come in the morning, everything's already checked up.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, one thing that I think is interesting is that you've trained quite a bit of folks to use your Zeiss CMM. What was that process like as you were training them to move away from some of the tools you just mentioned to start to use the product that you guys purchased?
I think on the training side of it, if you have knowledge of the machining, then it's a fairly easy process, because you're basically creating tool paths for inspecting your part. You're doing exactly the same thing that you do on a machine. You're telling them, hey, this is my clearance plane. This is my retract distance from a position. You're doing a helical tool path. If somebody has a machining knowledge, like I would say, most of the attendees, if you're having like a small or a medium-sized machine shop, you're managing all the operations, then the training part of it becomes fairly easy, because you have the knowledge of making the part. You're going to check it the exact same way. It's just a matter of figuring out how your software is, where everything is, which Zeiss also provides us a training. I went down to LA for a training, and they do a very good job. And also, I think last year they started doing online stuff as well because of the COVID. There's a lot of cool videos online training. Like right now, it's much easier versus how it was like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. David, did you have a hand in some of those training videos and training process?
I'm actually pardon my cough. I'm the narrator for a lot of the
Oh, nice.
the line scan, dot scan, VI scan, VAST training videos. So yes, I know what they are, and we're actually expanding them every 6 or 7 months. We're adding more and more live online training and pre-recorded training.
That's fantastic. Now let's see. So this leads us kind of nicely into the next topic. David, why is CMM the right tool for folks that are looking to kind of make that leap?
Well, many reasons, but I would start with productivity. Oftentimes, programming a CMM, once it's done, you can run more parts in a given time than you can before. I'd also go with repeatability and accuracy of results. because it's programmed and calibrated, it's going to give the same results today, tomorrow, next week, next month that you would not get from maybe a human inspection or other older systems. The third reason is many of our customers find that their customers are doing the very same thing on incoming inspection. And so many of our customers that might be at a tier 2 or tier 1 level say, I need to have one of these so that my quality results can be correlated with what my customer is measuring when they get my product. So there's that. And I guess the fourth reason is economic. With a CMM, you can minimize the number of false rejects in your manufacturing process, which of course then makes the units you're shipping a little bit less expensive. So there's economic value to it as well.
Absolutely. And Mark, I saw you nodding your head a little bit when David was talking. What are some of the things that you've seen from partners, Xometry partners that have a CMM and their ability to maintain some of our quality standards and on-time shipping, et cetera?
Well, I think the CMM is the right tool from, as David kind of mentioned, from the repeatability and standardization of actually doing something. It also has accelerated the on-time shipping. So rather than, the old school technology of using height stands and things like that, if you have to run a vast amount of parts, 100 parts, 50 parts, 20 parts, that's going to take you a lot more time to be able to measure something rather than creating a quick program for the very first part and then just repeating it into a cycle. Not only does it hold very tight tolerances, and as David alluded to, it'll give you the same reading today as it will 6 months from now. I've been running CMMs for nearly 30 years from some of the old school, and then I've ran a lot of Zeiss's from some of the new school. So understanding how to program something is very much so, like Sam alluded to, just like your 4 or 5 access machines. So what I have done in the past with some of the companies I've worked with is actually had the machinist who programmed the machine come in and develop the program for the inspectors, and the CMM would run on its own, and the checks and balance would be reviewing that report to make sure everything was copacetic and measuring accurately. So the CMM, from the right tool perspective, definitely replaces probably 95% of the other tools that you may use.
Yeah. And I imagine Sam, he was talking about they're running 1,000 parts and they've got to measure each one. And so having someone manually do that, not only error, but that time with on-time shipping becomes really.
Well, and one of the other cool things about a CMM, based on the plate layout that you have or the size of the CMM, is you can actually have one part running while you're loading another part. And then as the CMM completes it, you hit start and you touched off on the datums, and it'll find that other part to start measuring. As the first part, you're able to remove and replace that. So it's great from a production standpoint to move through inspection and increase your velocity.
Yeah, and Sam, I think we all know that Xometry has tight lead times on a lot of our jobs. How has the CMM, impacted your work on your Xometry work?
I think it's, especially if we're talking about like Xometry jobs, if I have a dimensional report required on, let's say my sample size is like 20, rather than doing it a traditional way where I'm checking dimensions and then filling out on Excel individually, I could run it all 5 at a time and just export the data into Excel, copy fast. I mean, saving hours and hours of just manual labor. I could print it into PDF, Excel, different formats required by the different kind of customers. And once you export it into Excel, you can literally just copy paste into, doesn't matter, it's a Xometry inspection sheet. It could be a different customer's inspection sheet. It's just a lot of time saving on it, and machining time is money, right? So
yeah, I was about to say is that time's money, and David was talking about the economics of it, with the false rejects, but also the time saved.
Right, and David touched pretty much every good thing about why the CMM is, and on top of that, like he also said that it kind of gets rid of the human error
Mhm.
because you're letting the machine do all the inspection. It's calibrated and it's correct within tenths. So all the data that you're gonna come, it's gonna be accurate. Your customer's gonna gain more confidence in you just because you're doing computerized reports. You're checking it on a CMM, and that kind of ends giving you more business, because the customers have more faith in you. And on top of that, you get the most out of your inspectors. Like I would have my inspector running some part on the CMM while he's checking a different job, and the caliper it might be a simple job. So you're doing two things at once. And also, like for the machinist, the CMM tables, they kind of give you the flexibility. You have a good size table, let your mind run wild, create your own fixtures, create your own, like every time I would have like at least 5, 6 jobs set up there for in processes. The guys can bring it in, they know how to load it and just hit start. And, it's like, it's a multi-purpose tool. Like time saving is the greatest thing.
Absolutely. David, I saw you kind of nodding your head a little bit. What
Yep.
do you have to add there?
Well, I wanted to make a comment that there are certain industries like medical devices or aerospace where if you're making machine parts or making parts with additive manufacturing, you've got to certify your whole manufacturing process to some industry standard. In the medical world, it's the FDA standards. In aerospace, they have a unique standard for that industry. And in order to do that, you often have to prove that your manufacturing process is stable and repeatable.
Hmm.
And the way you prove that is by measuring the characteristics of the parts you make and showing data over hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of parts that the critical dimensions are not moving. They're within the right tolerances. And you can do that with a CMM because the CMM will gather the data and make it into statistically meaningful reports that you as a manufacturer can show your quality authority, be it an independent agency or your own quality department, to prove that your manufacturing process is stable.
Absolutely. And
Well,
as Sam said, the customer's faith in you and you being able to prove that, that's everything,
Sure.
right? And that's not only how you retain customers, but that's how you get new ones from word of mouth, from recommendations from those other customers you have.
Right.
Now, I think we've actually touched on a little bit on this on kind of why CMM was the right tool, but Sam, is there anything that you'd add as far as you've used the tool, how it's improved your quality inspection?
It improved in a way where all of my inspection is precision. We're doing precision manufacturing, and the inspection is also matches your manufacturing needs. And I'm able to check complicated features with ease. You can have a different setup and you can set up your probes on a machine with like a star probe. You can check all 4 or 5 axes. And now the newer machines have a rotating head. You don't even need a star system. You could have rotation heads. And the one that I like is just the easier reporting. I don't have to juggle between things, just extract data, send it to the customers. And it looks much professional than the one that we were using like maybe 80 years ago. So, and
Sam, there's no way that you were using it 80 years ago. Don't lie to us, buddy. Come
no,
on.
not I'm just saying now, we got the machine about maybe I would say 5, 6 years ago. And before that, it was all manual Adobe PDFs and time-consuming process. And now I have a uniform process throughout to all of our customers. And for you guys, I'm just copy pasting the data from there to Excel, and never had any issues with the quality with you guys or any other customer. Everybody's same page.
Yeah, as your quality score says, right? You guys are fantastic and all work with us. Now, David, what do you guys hear from your customers, right? What's some of the feedback that you guys hear when someone starts to use your product for the first time?
Well, it's very similar. I would put it in several areas. First, I would say the customers tell us that, hey, that I've learned how to use your software and what it can do, and the amount of time it takes for me to create a measurement program has collapsed.
Mm.
And maybe it's down by 25%, maybe it's by 50%. I've seen 75% in some cases, but it's taking me way less time to create a measurement program. Oftentimes I can pull in a CAD model that's got PMI information on it, and I can pull that right into a program, and I'm much more productive. The second thing I would say is it's eliminated false negatives. It's eliminated me rejecting parts that I shouldn't have rejected. So those are the two big areas. Maybe Mark has some other comments he could make on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to quality inspection, me being in the quality realm for, like I said, nearly 30 years or so, I've used every tool imaginable when it comes down to actually measuring something and getting that false sense of security when you're utilizing manual layout possibilities. And really, from a manual standpoint, when you're laying something out, it's very difficult. You have to utilize a lot of trigonometry and calculus to be able to know that you're utilizing the right angle plates and sign bars and things of that nature. And then you're still restricted to more or less a 3-axis, unless you actually go and purchase a chuck that can be very expensive. And then how do you know how good that chuck is? Because it's not calibratable to actually install, a 4 or 5-axis similarity as the machine may be running. So utilizing the CMM, you can actually articulate most of them have an articulating head, or even if it doesn't, they have a scanning probe to where you can measure something way more accurately than you've ever been able to in the past. And with some of the CMMs that have really gotten into the optics and the camera add-ons and things like that, those are almost as close as a Renishaw touch probe on some of these Zeiss CMMs. So coming from that standpoint, your accuracy goes up tenfold. And then really what you're able to do is if a customer comes back and says, hey, something's out of tolerance and it's not on, and that customer is not inspecting it on a CMM, you can very easily show them the CMM report that may have been inputted or outputted into a formal inspection report or anything of that nature, and even share the program with them via video to show how accurate your machine is, and challenge some of those potential complaints coming from a customer. So the accuracy of a CMM is spectacular compared to anything else on the market today.
Absolutely. And I do want to, having David here, David, I do want to get into your zone here. Maybe we can come back to the savings as we kind of move through our time here. But
Sure.
David, I'd love for you to give us a little bit. We're talking, holistically about CMMs, but if you could talk to us a little bit about what Zeiss CMMs can bring and kind of how you guys, have carved out a nice space in the market for yourselves.
Did you want me to go through this in the subsequent slides, or did you want me to ad lib that last point?
No, how about let's go through this in the slides, and then you can ad lib at the end there. I can give you space at the end there.
All right. So there are often many businesses that are looking at a CMM and saying, that might help me along the lines that we've just talked about, but I'm not sure how to go about picking the right one. I'm not sure what to do. So we have some information that we prepared here, and the analogy we use is, what do you look at when you're buying a laptop? Do you, one hand, do you look and you say, well, that laptop has got 192 gigabytes of memory. That's really good. And it's got a Intel 92 core processor. It's really fast and it's really doesn't weigh a whole lot. 17-inch screen. That's cool. Or do you say, I know that that'll run PowerPoint, it'll run web browsers, and it'll run Microsoft Excel. That's all I really need. So let me buy one that way. And often what really happens is you choose based on a combination of both. Features for today and applications for the future. Could you go to the next slide?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what we've done is we've broken down what are the factors to consider when buying a CMM, and the first step of that is identify what you need today. And if you look in the left-hand column, you can see questions that will help you think that through, such as, what are the critical dimensions of my product? Because if you want to measure something, you usually have to be able to measure something that's 1/5, not 1/5, 10 to 20, you have to be able to measure something 5 to 10 times more accurately than the critical dimension you want to measure. And that drives what kind of machine you need to get. The other thing to think about is my product dimensioned in a 3D CAD model, so I can pull in that CAD model right into a measurement program and be off and running? And how much time do I have to learn how to program my CMM? Maybe everybody's super busy working overtime already and they don't have a lot of time, or maybe you've got new hires that you want to dedicate to this. Production question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
If someone
real
has a
quick.
question, go ahead.
Yeah, Sam, I just want to touch on, for you learning the programming of the CMM, how much time did that take you as you were onboarding your Zeiss?
So when we first got the machine, I went to LA for it was, I think, a week's training, because that time that was the first automated CMM we got, and we had nobody with the CMM experience. So I went over that. But once you have somebody on the floor who knows about this programming, then it's fairly, I would say, like a day at most. If the person is familiar with dimensions, the GD&T tolerances, and the callouts, it becomes a fairly easy process afterwards.
Absolutely. And that becomes a very marketable skill. Not that, we've obviously got we've got more jobs than people to fill them right now, but that's a very marketable skill to be able to teach a shop how to use those tools.
Yes, it is. And
one thing to add, if you don't mind, is the 3D CAD that you're able to upload into the CMM to inspect is the same 3D CAD that you use to program your equipment,
right,
manufacture it. So
that's one of the, I would say, a plus, because we have a couple of times run into an issue where I'm inspecting a part and part's missing a hole just because the programmer missed it. But I'm using the CAD model to inspect the part to what the part actually should look like. Then we catch the mistake in production that, hey, this part is missing a hole. Then it's like, oops, because things like that happen. So that really helps, because you are actually inspecting the part to the model provided by the customer.
Absolutely.
Right, exactly. Moving on, there's a number of production questions that you can ask yourself. The one I brought up earlier about industries that need to prove their quality is right in the middle there. Do I need to save the results for auditing by my customers? And the other thing that you need to think about is my production so intense, so high that I'm going to have to connect up some automation equipment like robots to load and unload parts, or conveyors to bring parts to the CMM for inspection. So a lot of things to think about today's requirements. And if we can go to the next chart, we'll look at some future ideas. There we go.
To add to what David just said, and even Sam kind of mentioned it for in process, is if you are a high-tech organization using robotics, or you have an FMS line of Makinos or 5-axis mills, you can actually put your CMM in between them and have the same FMS rollers and robot load right onto the CMM and press go, and the CMM will inspect, and then take it off the CMM and go right back to the next operation if need be. So it's super awesome to integrate with other machines.
That's a great point, and there are many customers that do that because they've got a lot of things to produce. So yes, great point. Some thought questions for those that are looking to buy a first CMM but want to think a couple years down the road. Let me just pick a couple of them. Can I move my measurement programs to more precise or bigger CMMs? You look for a manufacturer that maybe has a spectrum of products and uses the same measurement software across them all. And then the other one that people rarely think about, but is really important, is how will I get it locally serviced and maintained? Does the product I pick have a local service contingent or one that can get to me in the case of a breakdown? So I won't go through all these questions, but if anybody else on the panel wants to comment on them, feel free.
When it comes down to local service, there are Zeiss is definitely contracted with several CMM repair technicians and calibration technicians. And if there's an emergency where you need somebody same day, that might be a challenge. Most of the time, my experience has been I've been able to get same day service, or at least be able to get a hold of somebody at Zeiss and talk to their technical support to at least keep me operational until a technician could come out.
Right.
They'll run through several different iterations and testing platforms with you to test out to see, so Zeiss can actually understand, is it a software thing, is it a hardware thing, whatever that may look like. But ultimately, looking at that and having a technician come out is a lot cheaper than having a technician come out and try to fix something else. And it's definitely a lot cheaper than ruining your brand recognition if you end up having to utilize different techniques to inspect hardware and then ship it to the customer. So my experience has been super awesome when it comes down to the Zeiss service technicians. I don't know if Sam's had kind of similar experiences, so I'll kick that off to Sam.
Yeah, we have, I would say, add on to that, their phone technical support is just absolutely awesome. These guys, it's not, you're not waiting too long, and they always help you out. Most of the time, if you're running into any issue, they're able to solve it over the phone. I don't think in the past 6-7 years we have any need where we had to call a technician in-house. We do our calibration every 2 years, and they come in, they check. Every 5 years we do a full calibration where they come and check the rotors, the hardware of the machine itself. And it never broke down and still working great as it was earlier. And it's just a workhorse.
I'd tell you to knock on wood, but it doesn't sound like you need to. It sounds like it's a fantastic service and a fantastic product. So, yeah. So,
Okay.
David, we're coming back to the kind of the economics question that I had that we passed for time because I knew that this slide was here. Talk to us a little bit about the CMM ROI, and Sam, I'd love to hear your experience with it as well.
Yeah, glad to. On the screen is a screenshot from a, it's an Excel-based tool we have that allows us to take inputs from customers, the cells in green, and inputs from us about the price of a new machine, and it runs through and calculates, based on your production rate and the other kind of tools you're using and your labor rates, how long will it take for this machine to pay back? And then after that, what kind of annual savings can be forecast? And so it's a very good, and it gives you an ROI, as you see in the lower right corner. But it's a very good tool for someone in a shop to be able to use to take to their management and say, hey, if we did this, here's the savings we could achieve based on this model.
Yeah, and I think the ROI portion of this is actually extremely conservative. It's probably 3 or 4 times greater than that, based on it. So I definitely like this tool, and this allows partners and potential purchasers to really be able to play with the numbers a little bit and see what size CMM they may need for their operations.
Absolutely. Sam, you bring a unique perspective in that you have one, right? Can you attest that that you guys saw a positive ROI on your investment?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier too, just from my inspector, when a part is running on the CMM, I'm already having him check a different job on the side. So even if I'm getting a couple hours, 2-3 hours a day extra from him in his everyday shift, over the period of time, that adds up.
Absolutely.
On top of that, there's no cost for any external inspection because I'm able to handle everything inside, any critical, because majority of the new parts that we're seeing, any kind of industry, robotics, aerospace, all of them have very difficult and critical tolerances, like profile of a service, that we won't be able to check with traditional tools or traditional ways. So that all of that gets taken care of with the CMM. And like gauges, ring gauges or Deltronic pin gauges, you can check a hole on a different heights to check the cylindricity, make sure it's nice and parallel all the way up to from top to down. And just the tooling cost, your inspection time is more, you can get more from your inspectors over the time. I think these machines pay for themselves fairly quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to get to our polls. So David, not to speed you up, but if we can kind of talk through this slide real quick.
Sure.
We've got a couple polls that I want to get to, and then we've got some good questions, it looks like, in the chat.
That's great. Sure. Very briefly, assuming a lot of your audience would be first-time users of a coordinate measurement machine, I wanted to put together a summary of what we call entry class machines. Entry class meaning the first machine a small shop would buy, and that's what this chart is showing. There's 4 models around the periphery: an OInspect, which is actually an optical coordinate machine; Contura in the lower left; Duramax in the upper right; and Spectrum in the lower right. And in the center, you can see the environment for the shop, the kind of application, a suggested model that would make some sense, and the kind of sensors that are on that particular machine, whether it has a rotary table, which gives you a 4th dimension of measurement or not, and then the software, which is always our latest Calypso software. So it's just a simple summary saying, if you're considering one and you have these kinds of applications, these could be potential fits for you.
Absolutely.
And I have a question for you, David. So maybe elaborate also that when purchasing a CMM, the machines already know what they can hold, but then they have to be able to inspect those tolerances. So they could actually take on, would you agree, they could take on additional work in different platforms because now they have the capability and technical know-how to inspect something.
You're absolutely right. I'm not sure how to give an example because there are many, but you're absolutely right. A machine shop that maybe wasn't making or wasn't inspecting gears, for example, small metal or plastic gears, could do that with a Duramax, the machine in the upper right corner. It would allow them to expand the kinds of products that they sell, or the kinds of contract machining jobs they take on. Very good point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very good point.
I would add on to that as well. It's just, like you guys are mentioning, if I was before CMM, if I was checking every 10th pod completely, if I have a CMM with the program, I would check every 5th pod. Like it's running automatically, it's improving my quality in the end of the day, because now I'm checking, I don't even have to check every 5th pod, but I'll do it just because I'm just going to load and run it. It's not stopping my machine. It's not stopping my inspector from doing what they're doing. It's just loading machine doing what it does best.
That's a great point. As you have mature products that you've built up volume on, you can reduce the number that you inspect, which further saves you cost of inspection and speeds up your productivity. Yep. Exactly.
Those are fantastic points. And David, how often do you guys release the latest Calypso software? Is that each year, or are you guys releasing updates each kind of?
There's a major release every year. And there's a number of, I don't know, interim releases, you might call them, done every quarter. So every year we're adding 20, 25, 30 brand new features to it, and then making minor enhancements along the way.
Fantastic.
I'm still learning. There's so many features that it's like you still learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's see. Let's get into our polls here, and I'll have Luke launch the poll. Luke, let me know. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So here's where you can tell us, do your business goals include expanding additional inspection equipment? We're just kind of interested to hear from you guys. Obviously, if you're attending the webinar, you're interested in CMMs. But it could be, other inspection tools, right? And is it something that you're looking at having a CMM or other tools that we've touched on? And then also, if you're interested in speaking with the Zeiss representative, I know David and his team are more than willing to talk in more detail around some of the products that we produce or that we talked about today. And if you would, be interested in learning a little bit more about the Zeiss CMM and what that project could look like for you. And then after the polls close here in just a minute, I'll give it probably 5-10 more seconds. We'll get into a Q&A session where I know we've had some good questions in the chat that Luke can bring to us. So while we're waiting, anything that did I gloss over anything or speed anybody up that missed a topic that anybody wanted to talk about while we give them a couple more seconds to fill out the poll, and then I'll talk about those. Fantastic. No, this has been great so far, guys. So it looks like a vast majority of right now we're at 100% yes for businesses. Their goals include expanding to additional inspection equipment. So that's fantastic. And then we've got a few folks, David, that are going to want to talk to you afterwards. So that's good as well. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the poll real quick. And we can share the results with everybody afterwards. But let's get into an open floor. So I'm gonna stop share real quick, and I want to bring up Luke. Has there been any big questions? One that I know was seeded, right? Is Sam? It was something that someone asked in the community. Sam, when you guys were looking at purchasing a CMM, how long did that process kind of take you? Like as far as saving for the unit or thinking about in the market, kind of who you were going with. What did that process look like for as far as purchasing goes?
So the process, we had to brainstorm on what kind of needs that we have. We're doing a lot of precision work within tents, and we are doing a good amount of, if 90% of the jobs that do require dimensional reports, if our customers are like high-tech industry, aerospace industry, where we want to make sure that our products are right in spec every single time. That's when you work on getting a CMM. Doesn't matter like how many plans you make, and once you get a CMM, it's gonna get occupied with all the product. You're gonna, even the items that you did not put it down in your brainstorming for looking for a CMM, you'll still be running those on the CMM. Those machines, they fill up pretty quickly. Like as I mentioned, the CMM that we got for one specific customer, now it's the least work that their jobs are the least of the work that I do on CMM. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of Xometry jobs where we have, as we mentioned, about like quick lead times where we want to do fast reporting, accurate reporting. And as far as like economically, financially wise, you have to see, now there's a lot more choices than before. There's new machines, O-Inspect, there's Contura's Spectrum, as David mentioned on the slide before. So you'll have to see what fits best for your business model, but all of them are great machines.
Absolutely. And let's see. Looks like, I'll grab this one. So we're going to answer this one live. So regarding QMS, does this piece of equipment need to be validated within my QMS to use the measurement output? Who wants to snag that from our?
Just real quick, being the quality leader at Xometry and with my experience as quality leader for a long time now, the CMM ultimately doesn't have to be written into your QMS. What you do have to be making sure that it's calibrated at the appropriate intervals that you've established in your QMS. So it would be one of your calibratable tools that you'd have to maintain.
Absolutely. Anyone else have any thoughts there? I thought that was a great answer, Mark.
Yeah, I think Mark answered it pretty well. You just have to make sure it's calibrated, just so that it's a requirement from your ISO standpoint as well, if you're a compliant or certified company. And it does you good anyway. Like, if you have it calibrated and this, that it's working well, then you can totally count on it, rather than having it not calibrated. And then, then you can't really feel confident if a customer comes back and says, hey, I found this result. You can't really confidently get back to them saying, because all their customers, they are going to require you to present them with the calibration date, as Xometry does as well.
Yeah, and now we've got another great question from Victor here. CMM versus digital height gauge, some of the advantages versus disadvantages. David, you wanna talk through that, because I'm assuming you guys see that as you're talking to customers.
I'll start the discussion. Perhaps some of the others of you can jump in. The most obvious difference is a CMM is multi-purpose. You can measure lots and lots of different things with it. With a digital height gauge, I'm assuming all you can do is measure the height of something. So, it's a lot more flexible. It's reprogrammable. Results can be exported in lots of different ways for your customer to see it. So it's the same thing of comparing a CMM to a dedicated gear measurement machine or a dedicated form measurement machine. It's like another analogy would be like in track and field, a decathlon. A decathlon person can do 10 different things. A sprinter can do one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And I can do none of those. So
me neither. I wouldn't do well in track. So.
I would
yes,
add on to that, Adam. So as far as, like they said, digital height gauge versus a CMM, when you're measuring a surface on CMM, you can, like, even in a 1 inch square, you can say, I want to measure 150 points. You want to scan it. With the digital height gauge, you won't measure 150 points. Nope. The data is much more accurate, and you can get like perpendicularity, flatness, all other surface by just checking one surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, so we've got time for one more question to answer live, but if you have any other questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll get with our panelists afterwards and respond via email to everybody with kind of wrapping those up. But I think this is a good one to end on, and this is from Brett. Are there any benefits on optical CMM versus a typical CMM, such as a kiosk? So any of the benefits or differences there that you've seen?
I can take that on.
Yeah, Adam. Sam, go ahead.
I do have both of these machines, so I can probably answer. And the major benefit that I see is with the regular traditional typical CMM, you have much more flexibility as far as you can measure the height, the depth of items. You can measure a hole at a different depths, versus the optical, you're measuring from the top view. You can measure a circle at like a 1/2 inch depth. You can't measure it at there. There's certain optical machines that do that, but those come at a very high, expensive rate. The regular ones, they're easy. They're good to use on if you're using a high production and you want to put it on a floor, or even on inspection, you want the guys to come in and do a quick inspection. They will be quicker than the regular typical CMM, but there's limitations to the inspections you can do.
Absolutely. And Mark, it looks like potentially you're about to add to that.
Kiosk is, the optical kiosk machines or equipment is measuring in 2D, where your CMM can measure, like a Zeiss CMM with a Renaissance probe or whatnot, can measure in 3D. So it can give you a lot more true position accuracy. The measurements in 2D, if you're looking from an optical kiosk, then the preciseness just is not there. It goes based on shadows of the part versus an actual touching of the part. And you're always going to be more accurate when you're touching the part.
Sure.
Absolutely. Well, guys, this has been a fantastic discussion. I want to make sure that we end on time to respect everyone's everyone's schedule. We were booked for 50 minutes there, and want to make sure to wrap it up. But I want to thank each of our panelists. I want to thank all of our attendees. Like I said, some of the questions we didn't get to, we can respond via email. There will also be a chat discussion going on in the Xometry community. David, special thanks to you, Sam,
Sure.
as well.
Glad to.
Mark, you owe me a few favors, so thank you to you, but maybe not special thanks because you're an internal team member. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you very much for joining, and guys, thank you everyone for attending today as well. Fantastic event, and we look forward to more.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.